Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Hi there. Thanks for being on with us as we embark on our 28th episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast. This is a real treat today as we're joined by and able to shine a light on and spotlight Scott Richard, who is the Chief Information Officer at Mercy, top 25 health provider here in the Midwest United States, supporting 8 states here in the middle of the country, and have the privilege of knowing the Mercy team. Unfortunately, I take my kids there a lot more than I would like, but that's neither here nor there. Scott, had the opportunity to know Scott for a few years, and what's always really impressed me about Scott is his ability to navigate teams, but also amidst a lot of change. As we all know, healthcare has been changed dramatically over the last few years. Navigating through remote work, a lot of transformation that's happening, but also his career trajectory and what really fuels and fulfills him. We were really struck by his story. So first off, Scott, thanks for being with us today.
That's my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Scott, I think first the audience would benefit from really hearing about your leadership journey. You have a unique one, and I think there's some areas where you shared with us that really anchor you as far as how you lead and why you are the humble servant leader that you are. But furthermore, not a lot of people spend the amount of time with one organization and doing a litany of roles within the same organization that you have. And I think that really speaks to your tenacity and perseverance over the years, but also the value you've brought to teams, leaders that you've gravitated toward, et cetera. So would love to hear your leadership journey, and then we can dive into some of your pillars.
Yeah, thanks, Carson and Hilka. It definitely is a privilege to do what I do and to be able to lead people in a ministry. Really, Mercy's a almost 200-year-old ministry that started in Ireland with Sister Catherine McCauley, establishing a mission for women and children. And it's really a privilege to be, among the generations of people that have been in leadership in that organization. And it brings a lot of meaningfulness, and it brings a lot of weight to what we do, and it also brings a lot of opportunity to engage a broad team of co-laborers with us to move this ministry forward. So it's been a really privileged career. Everything I do, I've done for a long time. I've been at Mercy for as an employee for over 30 years, and I was a contractor for 3 years before that. But I had the privilege of really growing up in a great, stable upbringing. I had my family was a faith-filled family, and kind of helped me get a really solid grounding and into kind of what matters most in life and what pursuits are hollow versus ones that are kind of more counterfeit, or what's really real. So I feel like I had a great privilege growing up. Part of that was my father, when I was about 11 years old, was laid off and got a new job and was hired by Mercy to implement some of their first, they call it data processing systems back then, but Mercy was looking for automate their payroll. So he didn't have any background in that. He was not college educated. He had a high school degree, and he was a payroll manager that they thought had the aptitude to do it. So he got involved in Mercy. So he ended up working there 22 years. His and my career only overlapped by about 1 year. When I started, he was just on almost to retirement, but I had the benefit of seeing his work and what he was building, and I met a very important person in my life. I met Sister Mary Rock, who was at that point his boss, and she was a sister that was an operational leader within Mercy, and had really a great vision for the future of Mercy. So she's kind of, we call her our modern day modern day foundress. So I've had this continuation of meeting Sister Rock when I was 11 years old and thinking, oh, that's interesting. My dad works for a nun. And then went through my process in education and had some career disappointment and ended up finding myself finding Mercy, thinking it was a temporary role working at Dad's place. And but as I really started to spend more time there, I came really attached and engaged to the mission. And Sister Rock continued to be a growing leader at that organization and continued to personally mentor me along with a lot of other people. But when I look at the importance of what we do and all of our decisions, like again, we're on this 200-year continuum that's got a long way left to go. So I'm standing on the shoulders of others. And, a lot of times in decision making, I use the term, what would Sister Rock do? And, what's for the greater benefit of the ministry, which is ultimately the benefit of the communities we serve and being true to our calling. So I've had a really privileged kind of on-ramp to this meaningful mission that I'm on. But, not that I had that all figured out. That since I was a kid, I had a lot of learning to do, and I had a lot of steps I had to go through to get to where I'm at. But it's really a privilege to have the kind of role I have now, leading such a great team of people that are really committed to healthcare.
I'm so struck, like 50 years of the Richard family, basically, plus at Mercy, right? That's like a quarter of the Mercy existence of your family in it.
That's true. I had never thought of it that way, but it's significant.
Yes. And I also love your humility as you talked about what you've been learning along the way, because not many people stay with an organization for 33 years. So the question in my mind is, what have you learned along the way about connecting to what's truly important to you? Like my sense was when you were in your, I don't want to put ages on you, but let's say 3 decades ago, that version of Scott had probably some other ideas and insights about what was important than the Scott that we see today. So can you tell us a bit about that journey of discovery?
That's absolutely true. And I do like to talk about this part because I'm also old enough to I have children that are in their 20s and early 30s. And I know for people today that are kind of embarking on adulthood and their careers that, there's a lot of complexity to work through. And, some of those things I dealt with as well. So I'm happy to kind of share my story about kind of what brought me to a meaningful place. When I got out of college, I didn't really have any interest in leadership. Honestly, I knew some things about myself. I knew I was about my basis of my faith and how that gave me an overall vision for my life. But, I learned some things. I was an experimenter. I like to create. And so when I came out of college, having a computer science degree, if I thought I'd be a coder, I'd write code. And, like a lot of times it happens, you get out of school, you get your first job, 4 or 5 months into it, you're kind of like, this doesn't seem as meaningful, as interesting as I hoped it would be. And, I was under this fallacy, I think, that a young person has to have a specific calling or passion. How do I be like Steve Jobs? Or I'm going to get that assurance that I know exactly what I'm supposed to accomplish in life and make all my steps, pre-planned. And it really took me a few years in my 20s to get out of that, get out from under that weight in my mind that I'm not doing something important, and, kind of figuring out what's my passion. I kind of had my low point when I moved from job to job, and I worked for a utility company for a while, writing code that was very uninteresting to me, and, just very much feeling at crisis, like that I choose the wrong career. And I think what I was missing, I was just missing a connection to a purpose for what I was doing. So, and one of my times of prayer and meditation, I kind of got the analogy of, I feel like God showed me, just don't worry about that. Just keep your wheels rolling. That, if I'm looking for guidance from God, he can't steer a parked car. So just keep moving forward, and I'll give you more direction as you go along. So I kind of took that to kind of take the pressure off me that, okay, I didn't have to have this super defined passion about life. I just knew that I wanted to, I wanted to live a life that honored God, and I wanted to be able to do something that had an impact on people and help people. So that's when I got into healthcare. I figured I got to get out of this utility company, and I made the change and got this temporary job at one of the hospitals at Mercy in St. Louis, and soon I was impacted by the importance of the mission as I got out into the hospital and worked with different departments, which was a privilege. I had a role of just kind of basically set me loose to go out and figure out how to help the different departments. Back in the days when we were writing custom code for everyone and doing basic networking, but I really remembered the lobby and the elevators of seeing people that were there because they were in a very important crisis point in their life. There was excitement, there was babies being born, but I also saw kids without hair that I knew were going through chemotherapy, and so that just drew me. It's like, wow, this is an important place, and I really want this to work well. And I started getting connected to the caregivers that would, deal with that every day and the emotion of it and the intensity of it. And I started feeling drawn and connected to the caregivers and just kind of how do I help? How do I help you get better? And so that little by little started to pull me out of that ditch of thinking, I don't know what my passion is, because I felt like, healthcare is a worthy career to commit myself to. And so, that really pulled me out of that. And it was because, if I think once I had my purpose tank started to get filled up with healthcare, other things started to follow behind. I read a book a while back that talks about, career satisfaction has a lot to do with meaningfulness, mastery, and autonomy. And so when I felt my meaningfulness tank starting to fill up, I wanted to improve my mastery. I wanted to be better at what I was doing. And then that kind of, as I did that, I realized that I could bring solutions and help the organization. But eventually I had to do about myself. I had to get in the position where I was in leadership. And so that created that broadening of my impact that I really enjoyed. So I really didn't think I was going to be a leader early in my career, but as I cared about more and more about what I was doing and wanted to have bigger impact, I saw that I definitely would have to have collaborations and teams to work with me. So very, very, the meaningfulness was really the spark that got me going, and I still feel that 33 years later.
Scott, I think you beautifully articulated the almost majestic way that a career can really take you. It's quite a journey. And I always like to say you can't connect the dots forward, but you can definitely connect them backwards. You can see where God was working in certain situations, but you can also see where this change or this setback or this new relationship beget this path that really exceeded your wildest dreams. I love that Mercy was originally a temporary destination for you, and also that getting into leadership was almost accidental. But now you're, over 2 decades in leadership. I'd love to know, especially with the number of teams that you've, been privileged to work with and leaders that you worked for, what are some of the observations and maybe experiences that have been most valuable for you for maintaining connected teams, especially amidst all the dramatic changes in your industry?
Yeah, I'd say, it comes down to some of the same principles of the best thing you can do as a leader is to have a team of really people that feel the same purposes that you are for why we're here. And so the why are we here question is always something that in healthcare, it shouldn't be that hard to do. We're here because you're seeing the same thing I am. You're in the lobbies and the elevators, and you're seeing your friends and neighbors, and you realize that your family are going to be customers someday. You're going to be a customer someday, likely. And so, really, I always seen it as my role to connect people that work on our teams to that purpose. So I always say, if you go to a holiday party or a cocktail party and you're introduced to someone, they ask you what you do. I hope eventually, if you can't say it now, that you say you're a healthcare provider and not a database administrator or a network engineer, even though that's what you bring to work. That's what you offer to move the ministry forward. Ultimately what you're doing is providing healthcare. So So the most important thing for me, and it's natural for me because I went through this process myself, is just to keep kind of evangelizing that message of, we're in this to make healthcare better. It's going to make your community better. It's going to make things better for your family. And plus, you're being true to the 200-year-old mission that is now yours to improve and move forward and respond to the times and, understand the challenges of our times. We all have decisions to make. What do we do about AI? What are we doing about, about electronic health record? Making the right decisions, because eventually we're going to hand it off to the next generation. And so I found the most important thing, obviously, there's lots of technology leadership, but we have a very low turnover here, and we have a lot of people that are committed to the mission. And for a leader, it's just important to always reinforce that. I do something where I always try to bring in, like in December, we had our chief nursing officer come in with our team meeting and just tell us about how much of the impact that technology is having on the practice of nursing. And nursing has been very challenged the last couple of years with the pandemic and with staff shortages. And so help us know how we're helping you, but also help us know maybe how we're not helping you enough. And so it's really important to make that connection. It's been a little more challenging in remote work era because a lot of my teams do work remotely, and so a lot of them don't have the lobby and elevator experience naturally because some of them are just working from home most of the time. So that storytelling, reminding everybody of celebrations. Here's what you did to make this patient process easier. Here's how we implemented something to make a diagnosis more accurate. Here's how we did things to make a nurse's life spend less time in front of the computer, or spend less time doing administrative things that are below her potential as a nurse. So she's spending time, she or he's spending time in clerical work. That's not their potential. And so always trying to keep people connected to that. So pretty simply, my role as a leader and my leadership team that works with me is just advocate for connecting to that mission, being authentic so that people know it's not just a pitch, that you really feel it yourself. And then just reminding them occasionally of, you're making a big difference. You are having a big impact. And when we fail on something like downtime, we all hate downtime. It's like, how would you like to be in the emergency room waiting for an X-ray or a CT scan and you can't get it because the systems aren't available? We should hate that stuff. We should do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen as much as we can. So when you build all that just builds this level of intentionality and care about everything we do. And then when you have hard times and challenging times, everybody's rushes to the front and wants to help. And so, you can people will draw on that meaningfulness that's been cultivated within them, to reap it during times of harvest when we need it. We need you to, we saw that in the pandemic response, and we see it all over the times when we have, critical things we have to accomplish. So that, to me, that's the benefit of building that into people, because I see that when times get tough, they just step into it, and I don't have to push them. They run.
A powerful culture.
I'm just so struck by the intentionality, Scott, in what you're saying of your institution and then of yourself, and how generously and how humbly you are taking that forward. I was struck by a few phrases here. One was, God can't drive a car that's parked. And that is, to me, such a beautiful sentence to inspire us to just follow the next step and trust that the path will show itself, which your career illustrates to me. And then the second thing is, what are we handing off to a future generation? And to me, it's such a liberating question, and one that opens the aperture so much in terms of what we as leaders are here to do. Very far away from my mini little ego, but it puts me in the context of, in your case, I'm being a health provider. I'm part of an institution that's here to serve way before and way after me. So I'd love to explore this whole area about what are we handing off a bit more after the break. And I suggest that we take a short break now, and then we come back after the break to speak with Scott Richard, who's the Chief Information Officer and healthcare provider at Mercy.
Excellent. Thank you.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So you had this question about what does that provide you, and how do you talk about what you hand off to future generations, and maybe what did you learn from Sister Rock about that?
Well, from Sister Rock and other Mercy leaders, and there's been several Mercy leaders that have been very large influence and mentors for me. But I think just the concept of we're having our turn in leadership, and it's a privilege to have it. And I mentioned before this concept of kind of understanding the times that you live in. And one thing that our former CEO that I was very much very close to, he had a statement that I really resonated with me, is that when you're on this, when you have a purpose-driven organization, every leader has to make choices about change. And he said, I paraphrase this a little bit, but he said basically it's our responsibility to know, based on the times, what has to change, but also know what can never change. So what it is about our purpose as an organization that is rooted back in 1827, that we still call upon today, that we pull forward to say this is part of who we are, and this organization has endured for all these years, and it has grown and prospered through challenging times because we stuck to this culture, we stuck to these values. But at the same time, every generation we deal with, we deliver it differently because of the times that we're in. So with technology and with our, with the broader healthcare, the state of the broader healthcare ecosystems and all the complications around that, requires us to make choices and making sure that we're thriving and going to position our ministry to continue to have impact, continue to help communities, but knowing that from our culture around who we are, about our core values around serving our communities, around being true to the original calling. We use one of the things of Mercy we use as an example is the early sisters. Basically parked themselves and they bought a building in downtown Dublin right next to the bank, and put the poor and the indigent that they cared for kind of right in the middle of the upper class. And just kind of look at what's going on in your city. And then the sisters were known as walking sisters because they weren't cloistered. They didn't stay in the convent. They went out and found the need, and they bought food and education to the need, and they brought people back to the Mercy Center. And so this concept of the walking sisters still, that's still being applied today as, where do we walk next? Let's not stay where we're at, but and technology and care a few years ago, we used that for getting into virtual care. And so, that's going to allow us to expand. Mercy has hospitals in very large communities, but we also have lots of remote, small town critical care hospitals that don't have the staff and some of the skills that are available in other places. So we use those, we draw on the walking sisters analogies. Let's go out there and find the need in our communities. And from my team's perspective, for several years we've been providing some technology services to even other health systems besides Mercy. So outside of our Midwest area, we found things that we can do that assist usually smaller health systems than ours that don't have the capacity and the expertise. And we do that to generate extra revenue, but we also generate it because we can bring, the goodness that God's given us for our organization. We can help deliver it affordably and more with, much more easily to some of these smaller communities. So again, the walking sisters concept. So I think that, leading through change has got that dimension of figuring out what would Sister Rock do today? What would Sister Catherine do today? What would my dad do today around responding to what do we do with AI? And do we move fast? Do we move slow? Do we, we move with intentionality? We honor the things around. We know we're not going to put our patients' information at risk, but we also know that we're going to be bold and we're going to find the right places to really push in on it and progress, but not do anything that would be dangerous or our patients.
Scott, you've articulated some things during the course of our time together today that I think are, in my mind, no easy feat, right? I mean, look, for a lot of the folks watching, I don't know if you're aware of some of the different elements of, a hospital or a provider leadership chain. But, there's obviously medical, nursing, population health, marketing. There's a lot of other partners in your business and in your mission that you're working with. And so when you talk about some of these other groups that are, really spending time with you as a good partner and sharing with you what's working, what's not, it takes a creation of culture and a nurturing of culture to have that type of a relationship. What are some practical pieces of advice that you could give today for leaders to cultivate that kind of culture? Because I think that is what is missing in a lot of leadership cultures today, is that ability to be clear, transparent, kind, empathetic with one another, but also to stay grounded on the mission. I think that would help us quell, a lot of the political differences that we sometimes have within organizations. Would love to hear some practical advice that you could give to some of our leaders today to help nurture that type of culture.
Yeah, it's good point, Carson. And I think about it, and it's for me, I feel the meaningfulness and culture thing is easier for me because I'm in healthcare, but I don't think it still applies to any leader in any organization. There's going to be something purposeful about why that organization exists and why you're there. And there's going to be something purposeful about why people that work for you come to work there. And there's purpose all over the place that we can choose to engage in what we do, or we can leave it out of the picture. And I think that's a mistake. So I think for me, no matter whether you're in healthcare or what other industry, I think starting with authenticity, really start by self-exploration, understand what drives you, and take that car that's rolling, and eventually you and God are going to you're going to park in a spot where you are going to go to a spot where it's meaningful for you, and you feel that connection to what you're doing, and whether it's healthcare or whether it's some commercial products where you feel like it's going to have a good impact on the world, or whatever you're doing, whatever lights your internal light. Be authentic about that. Don't be afraid to talk about it with people. Be vulnerable in the way you talk about it. Because I'm honestly, when I have leadership meetings, I'm a goofball sometimes. I share stories, I share analogies, I share dumb jokes. I talk about our mistakes that I've made, and so I think getting to the point where people just trust you, what you say, and that they know you're not towing a company line or trying to talk them into something you don't believe yourself. So I think authenticity is probably the number one thing. And then secondly, empowering your team. So your next line of leaders, they should all have a path, and making sure they understand meaningfulness, but also feeling accountable as somewhat shepherds of their teams to make sure that everyone is getting the full benefit of what it means to work here. So you should have the connectedness. You should have the ability to have your ideas heard and your opinions heard. You should be able to connect what you do to the end result of what we're doing in healthcare, to the quality of care to our patients. And so everybody should develop a pride in that, and we should celebrate it. And it's not church here. We still have conflict, and we still have people issues, and we still have politics like everyone else does. But if you have that core, okay, I believe my leader is being authentic, and I've got a little spark in me to know I want this to work as well. I want this to work right. I want healthcare to work right in our organization. And I think that propels like a locomotive people through all kinds of things in their life, challenges at work, and also drives them into growth. So I love to see people that work in our organization grow. I even like to see them grow out of our organization. I've just had lunch with somebody recently who was a very strong leader, contributor, a person that I really admired and enjoyed. And she got a great opportunity outside Mercy. So, but she's still doing something really meaningful, and I feel really proud that I was there or somehow had some small part in her growth and success. So I think, again, that's something every leader can feel, no matter what industry you're in. You have an impact on people's lives and their growth and all the sphere of influence that they have around them. So I really get into that, and I think that's I just encourage leaders just to consider the kind of impact they can have in terms of helping their people feel connected.
Yeah, utilize that position to make the purpose personal.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I'm struck by, even though I don't sit in your organization, Scott, how you provide leadership also during this podcast, right? Because I feel that you are opening a space, a context within which reflection on your purpose, what lights you up. What is the spark that drives your car? What are you guided by? What lights you up? You make that permissible. You make that invitation for so many of us who might be stuck in some kind of mind stream where that's not part of the reflection. And the way you speak about it, for me, opens the door to that kind of reflection, which allows for sparks to fly. So thank you so much for being with us today. Anything final that you'd like to share, Scott? Because incredibly, we're already at the end of our time for today.
No, I think we've covered it. I mean, I think I love the idea of this podcast. I think that seeking out purpose and meaningfulness in what we do is, like I say, it's not always an easy hunt, but when you find it, you know it's a spark, and then that turns into helping others find their purpose. I think at the end of the day, we'll look back at the end of our careers and know we did something important. We know we made a difference, and we know we made a great handoff to the next generation. So it's very important, and it's very worthwhile. And I appreciate you all giving me the platform to share this. I think it's important. I want to help spread this message.
Thank you, Scott. We're very appreciative, not only of the time you spent today, but also everything that you and your team do for our communities and many communities out there. Amazing journey, amazing story. Thanks for being with us. Also for everyone watching, listening, thanks for joining us on the Connected Teamwork podcast with my co-host here, Hilke Faber, and myself, Carson Hetty. We will hopefully be seeing many of you this week with the Connected Teamwork Summit. And then also we'll see you for our regularly scheduled program next Monday and every Monday here on the Connected Teamwork podcast. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork podcast.